5 years ago, I stood in this very spot around 4 in the morning, filming a video that I thought was gonna change the world. I was at the peak of my manic phase, had delusions of grandeur, and hadn't slept for days. This is the story of how it all happened. The whole thing happened in Victoria, British Columbia, the most amazing place I've ever been to. But before I tell you about Victoria, I have to tell you about the place where I was born and raised. This is Monterrey, Mexico. This is the only culture I knew until I left for university. Three things about Monterrey. It's industrial, it's conservative, and it's Catholic. This trifecta makes for a very peculiar city. People here work, they make their money, they get drunk on the weekend, and then they go to church on Sunday. It's all about making a good impression. People here don't really think about why they do what they do. They do it because it's the way it's supposed to be done, because it's the way it's always been done. So this kind of environment breeds people that are jealous, judgmental, greedy, and envious. Behind me is one of the many Catholic churches here in Monterrey. This is where parents take their kids from a very early age to teach them how to pray. Now these kids don't really understand the prayers, but they do it because their parents tell them it's the right thing to do, because it's the way it's supposed to be done. Now these kids don't really get to question their religion because the church doesn't really allow their religion to be questioned. The way their religion is now is the way their religion has always been. These same kids are going to have a certain mentality about the way they make decisions in their lives. So they're going to grow up and they're going to become a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, an architect, or a businessman, not so much because they really desire to do this with their lives, but because they were told to do so, because it makes a good impression in front of society. So going to church becomes the same thing as doing their job. They don't really like it, but they do it because they get a sense of accomplishment at the end of the day. The same way they file meaningless reports in their office every day is the same way they used to go to church every Sunday as a kid and pray. I spent the first 19 years of my life growing up here in Monterrey with the same mentality. I remember as a kid, every Sunday I would go to church and I would pray. And I would picture myself growing up and working at an office and making a lot of money and raising a family. And I stayed with this exact same mentality until I left for university. About a year before I left for university, I got expelled from the American School Foundation of Monterrey. This is the nicest, most private, most expensive school in all of Monterrey. And I'd been going to the same school since I was 6 years old. And 14 and a half years later, in my second last semester of high school, I got expelled for stealing an exam. And this school reflects Monterrey environment like a mirror. All of us kids in there were just a bunch of arrogant kids, always stepping on each other, picking on each other, trying to get on top of everyone else. And I remember feeling really, really uncomfortable, and I had no self-confidence when I went to the school, because I was trying to be like these other kids when I really wasn't like these other kids, right? I was trying to be like someone I wasn't. So that made me feel like a zombie pretty much. I was walking around my life half asleep. And when I stole the exam and I got expelled, it woke me up. And I asked myself, what the fuck kind of life have I been living this whole time? So imagine you're living your life for 19 years in Monterrey, Mexico, and then all of a sudden, you come here to Victoria, British Columbia. I mean, to me, it was the most shocking experience of my entire life, bar none. I was walking around this place being like, is this for real, man? Like, is this ocean really here? Are these people really this nice to me? Am I really walking around in such a magical, wonderful place? It was just so powerful to be in a place like this all of a sudden, because it was like I was being compressed for so long in Monterrey, and then I got here and I was like, are you fucking kidding me, man? I was so excited about life. I was just making so many self-discoveries, because the way I thought of myself was based on what people thought of me back in Monterey. You know, everything people told me about myself, I believed it, and that was how I constructed my own identity. But when I came here, I started meeting all these people, and they started saying, you know, telling me all these different things about myself, and I was like, wow, you know, maybe I am a pretty cool guy. Maybe I do have this amazing potential in my life, and maybe I can be really anyone I want to be. I would just be walking around in this absolute ecstasy, meeting all these people like, hey man, how's it going? They were smiling at me, being so nice to me. So why do you do this? Why do you sing along and open people's doors?
One, it's a good stress release thing for me. I really like doing it. I really like helping people in this small way.
Okay.
Additionally, I just, you know, I think there's too much disconnect in the general social sphere, and this is a way of a little bit bringing people together, because I mean, I smile at people every morning and they see the same faces and they know me and I know them to a degree.
In Monterey, people don't really have time to talk to you because they're just so busy. It's just such a fast-paced kind of a life. And here, everyone's so chill because they live in such a gorgeous place. They don't really need anything. They have everything they need, everything they want.
It was a hobby to start with. We had a lot smaller, and then it sort of grew over the years. It started with just daffodils, and then we added peonies, and then the rest of it sort of come along with it. So most of the time they put money in the slot. Yeah.
It works, eh?
Oh, it works. Well, the odd time it doesn't, but 99% of the time it does.
Everyone's just having a great time. And I was having a great time for the first time in my life almost. It was the first time I really felt this really amazing hope for human beings and our potential and how we can really thrive. So, you build birdhouses?
Yes, it's I've been building birdhouses for quite a few years. It's a very good hobby of mine, so yeah, I enjoy it. Everybody that buys them seems to appreciate them and love them, so it makes me feel really good. Awesome. Yeah.
On top of this place itself, Victoria, being amazing, I was also smoking a lot of weed, because this is British Columbia, and here they have BC bud, what is known to be the most powerful and potent marijuana in the whole world. So imagine, like, the place itself and the experience itself is already really extreme to me, and then on top of that, I was smoking weed every single day. My whole experience here in British Columbia and Victoria was just this hyped up, hypersensitive, dreamlike experience in which I was always absorbing every single moment, and everything was just so incredible to me. It was just absolutely surreal. After a while though, everything was becoming too overwhelming for me. I was almost too happy. I felt anxious. I would just go through these extreme emotions all the time and this anxiety. And I was sitting in my room one day and I had this huge eureka moment. So what I did was I wrote an email to a professor and I said to him this crazy email. I was like, "Professor, I just had a eureka moment. I'm thinking about the decisions I'm making in my life. You know, I think you're a very wise person. I'm seeking out your wisdom," like just this very extreme email. He said to me, "Rodrigo, there's two kinds of people in this world, dreamers and dream helpers. You are a dreamer. There should be more people like you in this world." So after my professor had told me that I was a dreamer, I felt this insane power inside me and nothing could stop me anymore. Fucking single moment of my life is beautiful. Every single moment. So I came into this classroom and I said, "Professor," I interrupted the entire lecture and I said, "Professor, I have these ideas that I would like to share." So I started talking about this idea I had about time. Listen to the message. Time is running out. Time is running out. Every single moment of my life is so important, and to waste anything at all is just completely disrespectful to my existence. And I said, all is. This is the perfect description of existence. All is, and at the same time, all isn't. The chalk itself is what I'm trying to say. The chalkboard itself is what I'm trying to say. What's behind it, this classroom, everything that doesn't exist, it's all just a snap But some people were laughing at me, some people were like really confused, some people really got it, but the best reaction was from the professor. She said, I really want you to do it again for lecture B tomorrow. And I was like, of course, professor, I would be honored to do that. And I ran out of the classroom and I just kept my journey going. That same night, I didn't sleep. I remember I was out at my friend's house, we weren't sleeping, we were smoking weed, but they went to bed around 2, but I stayed up because I was so excited about my life. You know, I remember I forgot something back in my house, so I went running down the streets at 3 in the morning. Oh man, I forgot something. Listening to the same song over and over and over. Time is running out. When I listened to the song, I felt like time was morphing. Time is running out. It's all just a snap. Every single moment of my life is so connected, and to waste anything, my life is my journey. Be yourself. Liberate yourself from what you've been your entire life. And when I got back to my friend's house, I found this camera. And I realized the power of the camera. I was like, man, I can change the world with this camera. Time is running out. So I was dancing in this video, thinking that my video was going to go viral and I was going to change the entire world, man. You just move the hands upon the car. Hey guys, it's me. I'm Rodrigo. I'm 19 years old. I'm Mexican. I want to change the world. I'm just going to dance to this fucking song and have an amazing time and change the world. Hopefully the police will come and I'll tell them my whole speech about life itself. How's it going, man? And as soon as I was done the video, I shut off the camera, went running to my friend's place. I edited the video and uploaded it to YouTube and then sent it to my dad. Because I thought my dad was going to love that video. I thought he was going to be like, wow, this is my son. This is the new person he's become. But obviously, he realized that something was not quite right and I wasn't really being myself. So the very next day, he bought me a ticket back to Mexico. And before I knew it, my Victoria journey was over. So when I got back to Monterey, I got very depressed because I came from being in this magical city called Victoria, doing so many things every day, and my schedule was full of wonderful things, to going to a city like Monterey, which I had grown to hate, and doing nothing with my life. I remember I would wake up every day around 10 a.m. and think to myself, man, I just can't wait for it to be 8 p.m. again so I can go back to sleep. I would spend all day sleeping or watching movies, watching 3 movies a day without even enjoying them. And I began to see a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said that what had happened to me was a manic depressive episode with delusions of grandeur, and he diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. And you know, psychiatrists like to objectify these kinds of situations and say that, you know, to make it seem like everything's under control and everything's very objective and easy to calculate. But the reality is, I feel like it was a completely different thing. If you live in a city like Monterey your entire life for 20 years, and all of your good and bad emotions kept getting compressed inside of you for 20 years, and you couldn't let these emotions out because you weren't really allowed to in that society, and then you all of a sudden move to a new city like this, and you've never seen anything like this before, and all of these emotions you've had inside you for your whole life just explode, and then you feed this same fire with thoughts and philosophies and ideas and weed. Before you know it, you're in the middle of the street without having slept for days, dancing with a pair of bunny rabbit ears on, thinking that you're gonna save the whole world by making this video. A lot of people, like, you know, my parents and, you know, adults, let's say, looked at the situation and said, wow, this is sort of like insanity almost. You know, it was very peculiar to them. But I like to look at it as a simple cause and effect situation. I don't think of myself as being insane for having done what I've done. It's just, it looks bad in front of society because everyone is trying to be like everyone else, and I was just being myself completely. It's been 5 years since the whole thing happened, and now I'm graduated from University of Victoria, and here I am making this film. It's been an amazing journey these past 5 years in Victoria, and it wouldn't have been the same without the whole thing that happened when I first got here. It would have sucked, man, if I didn't do the whole thing, so I'm glad it all happened. I haven't smoked any weed since because I know it just doesn't work with the way my mind works, and I feel great.